Good morning, class. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Ayun. Si Bonifacio na lang kulang, no? Papasok ba siya? Yung ka-group ni Bonifacio.
Doc, hinihintay po namin siya mag-reply. Pero sabi niya po sa akin kagabi po,
Mm.
attend daw po siya.
Oo,
Pero
sige.
wala po siyang reply ngayon.
Oh. Kasi di ba nag-announce yung government na dapat walang pasok. Pero sa Mapua, we have synchronous class pa rin daw. So, ayun. Anyway, siguro antayin pa rin natin ng konti. Or mahuli na lang kayo mag-present. Unahin na lang natin si Group 2. Group 2, ready na ba kayo? Sila Bernardo, Empainado, tsaka Makabenta. Habang inahantay si Bonifacio.
Yes po, sir.
Okay.
Yes po, sir. Sige.
Yung group 3 pa ready na rin, tsaka yung group 1 ha. Yung presentation nyo para tuloy-tuloy tayo.
Sir,
Group 3, kindly listen to the presentation of group 2 ha. Kayo mag-aas ng question. So, group 2, you can start whenever you are ready.
okay. Am I audible po?
Yes.
Thank you po. Okay, good morning po everyone. Today we will continue our discussion of the comparative analysis of sustainable practices, the case of IKEA and Eurotex Foam. So previously, we've looked at the background of both leading global brands, which is IKEA, and a local leading brand, which is Eurotex, in the home and lifestyle industry, as well as some of their green initiatives that they have been pursuing. Now, let's move deeper into how these efforts are structured and implemented. So, to better understand this, we'll first look at their supply chain structure, which shows how their sustainability frameworks are implemented. So, let me start first with discussing the supply chain structure of IKEA in the Philippines. So, first is on the procurement of raw materials. Globally, here, IKEA enforces a strict sourcing standard. Like, for example, 99% of its wood is either FSC certified or recycled. This also ensures the responsible forestry and it reduces environmental impact. However, on further research here in the Philippines, local sourcing of sustainable materials like bamboo and rattan is limited since most of the products are still imported from IKEA's global supplier network. Next is for the inbound logistics. Now, in global context, IKEA is transitioning its shipping operations towards biofuels and also electrified shipping routes to reduce their emissions. In the Philippines, their inbound logistics are less transparent because the reliance on long distance import is clear. Still, IKEA has begun adopting electric vehicles for select routes that also shows alignment towards the global goal. Next is the manufacturing and internal logistics. For this, in a global setting, IKEA has shifted to a renewable electricity in its production and distribution center. Now, here in the Philippines, specifically in the Pasay branch, Pasay City, they reflect this by waste segregation, recycling, and energy efficient design. But there's still a gap in uh, local emissions data given our limited resources here locally from the warehousing and the logistics since it's not really fully disclosed. And next is the outbound logistics. Now, IKEA has a global target of 100% zero emission deliveries by 2025. Here in the Philippines, the goal is 33% by 2025. And as of 2023, about 7.7% of the deliveries were already done through electric vehicles. This shows a measurable progress towards reducing the carbon footprint of the last mile delivery setup. So overall, the IKEA branch here in the Philippines demonstrates a strong effort to adapt their international sustainability practices in a local context. But there is still uh, present challenges like local sourcing and the transparency of the logistics emissions.
And then for the Eurotex home, Eurotex supply chain structure is a well-structured system that integrates sustainability at every stage. It begins with the procurement of raw materials. To make their polyurethane foam, Eurotex needs key raw materials like polyol and isocyanate, which are sourced both from foreign suppliers. And this strategy is supported by a joint venture with Japan's Inuwa Corporation, which is a partnership that ensures a stable supply of raw materials, giving Eurotex a critical advantage in terms of cost, quantity, and quality. And then for inbound logistics, Eurotex is committed to cleaner transportation in partnership with the Movement Electric, which operates as the sustainable mobility arm of Manila Electric Corp, or the Meralco. And so now Eurotex is now using electric light delivery trucks in its logistics and supply chain of operations at its Paridel, Bulacan facility. This is their key step towards their zero emissions goal. We also have a solar power plants at various facilities which not only reduce emissions from electricity consumption but also provide a significant financial benefit. And then for manufacturing, Eurotex processes foam through a series of steps, which includes chemical foaming, curing, and cutting. However, the company is actively decarbonizing its operations by partnering with ASEN to power its facilities with renewable energy. This initiative supports their ambitious goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 30% this year and achieving net zero by 2030. So to improve efficiency, the company also developed a manufacturing execution system called the Electronic RGC Production System, a software that integrates monitoring, controlling, and tracking of manufacturing operations from order to delivery. And then lastly, for outbound logistics, Rotex strategically locates new facilities in certain areas like Butuan and General Santos, which is in Mindanao, to shorten delivery times and reduce carbon emissions. This strategy combined with the use of electric delivery trucks on selected routes ensures that their products reach customers efficiently and with a reduced environmental impact.
So going on with the comparison of IKEA and Eurotex, so for the procurement of raw materials, so here, globally, IKEA enforces strict sustainability in sourcing with 99% of its woods FSC certified or recycled. But however, in the Philippines, it heavily depends on imports and underuses locally available raw materials. This shows a gap between global sustainability goals and local execution. While Eurotex relies on imported chemical inputs for foam production but ensures supply stability through its partnership with Innovac, so this gives Eurotex localized control over its operations, although it remains dependent on foreign raw materials. So for the inbound logistics, so IKEA is transitioning to renewable fuels and electrified shipping worldwide. but in the Philippines, EV adoption is still limited and only applied on selected routes. So this highlights slower adaptation to local infrastructure constraints, while RearTex takes a more localized approach, using electric trucks in its Bulacan facility with solar-powered charging. So reflects a stronger integration of sustainability within local operations. So next one. So we have the manufacturing and its internal logistics. So IKEA aligns global operations with renewable energy, circular packaging, and emission reduction. So in the Philippines, however, transparency gaps exist in tracking emissions from warehousing and logistics, making local accountability weaker. So while Eurotex actively invests in solar power plants, renewable energy from ASEN, and digital production systems. It also sets clear emission reduction targets of 30% by 2030, showing stronger commitment to measurable sustainability within local operations. Lastly, for outbound logistics, so for IKEA, so IKEA has ambitions global goals of 100% zero emission deliveries by 2025. In the Philippines, it targets 33% EV-based deliveries, but had only achieved 7.7% by 2023, showing slower progress than expected. While Eurotex uses EVs but on limited routes, to compensate, it strategically places warehouses to minimize transport distances, reducing overall carbon emissions even without large-scale EV deployment. So next slide, please.
Now we'll assess their corporate social responsibility or CSR initiatives that demonstrate how the company translates its long-term environmental and social commitments to its measurable actions. So for IKEA, these are framed around IKEA's 2030 global goals that promote healthy living, becoming circular and climate positive, and ensuring fairness across the value chain. These are what we highlighted as their green initiatives. So first, on the life cycle studies or LCS, in the global context, IKEA uses LCS to measure the environmental impact of its products that um, that assesses on their lifespan. However, in the Philippines, there's still limited evidence of localized product level LCS data, which is harder to assess on local progress. Next is the carbon and water footprint. Now, globally, IKEA has reduced its total climate footprint by 28% compared to its 2016 baseline. And here, locally, the Philippines contributes to, as we stated before, the EV deliveries or electric vehicles. Next is the food waste reduction and also the recycling program. But again, there is no clear localized reporting on water data, which leaves some gaps in the transparency report here in their Philippine branch. Now, when it comes to the healthy and sustainable living, IKEA has been promoting a global shift to plant-based meals and eco-friendly household products, which is evident if you've been to their store or if you bought their product. If you brought their product, then in line with this, mm, the Philippine store has committed also 50% of its restaurant menu to be plant-based by 2025. This supports both the climate and the health goals. And lastly, for the circular and fair value chain, IKEA in a global context enforces its I-Way supplier code. Now, this covers the labor rights and environmental standards. Here in the Philippines, it has also adopted the waste reduction initiative, and it very much promotes the workforce gender diversity. However, on supplier level transparency, local context once again is limited. There is a need for improvement in the local setting of transparency in terms of like life cycle assessment and also emissions report. Now, in summary, the IKEA CSR is a strong alignment with the has a strong alignment with the global commitment um, specifically the sustainable dining, the waste management, also the greener logistics, such as the implementation of electric vehicles. But as we've stated, it faces a challenge in the areas of localized LCS reporting, also the water and carbon footprint data, and also um, inter a much deeper supplier accountability. So that's for the assessment of the CSR for a team.
For Eurotex commitment to social and environmental responsibility is an important part of this business. On the social initiatives, the company has several key initiatives. First is the Good Neighborhood Program, which provides a tangible relief during disasters with specific donations that have included 24,000 relief mats and 15,000 tables and chairs. And then next is for their employees. Their dedication to employees is shown through a scholarship program that has supported 429 scholars since 1994. And then they also engage in high-profile advocacy such as the Project 50 campaign, which donated 2,500 mattresses to hospitals nationwide to celebrate their 50th anniversary. And then on their environmental initiatives, Eurotax has made significant measurable progress. They've partnered with ASEN to source 53% of their power from clean energy, an effort estimated to eliminate 22,750 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually. And then next is the fleet electrification. Moving from a small pilot of e-bikes to a major partnered with, again, the Movem Electric for their delivery trucks. And then their waste management efforts are uh, also notable as they recycle and upcycle most of their post-industrial waste to prevent it from reaching landfills and to comply with the new EPR law. So in summary, Eurotex demonstrates a deep-rooted commitment to both its community and the environment, showing that business success and social responsibility can be interconnected and mutually beneficial.
So for the comparison of CSR, okay. So IKEA publishes comprehensive, globally standardized CSR reports with detailed data on emissions, renewable energy, and circular growth. So, however, Philippine specific data, for example, like their water footprints and supply chains, is limited, so making the local transparency weaker. While in Eurotex, although it does not publish formal global CSR reports, but focuses on tangible localized programs, as mentioned earlier, the disaster relief, so educational scholarships, and sustainability campaigns. So this makes its CSR less formalized, but more directly relevant to the community. So next one. So for social responsibility, so IKEA promotes fairness and diversity globally and highlights workforce inclusion. So in the Philippines, though there is a little public evidence of local supplier labor practices, so raising concerns about its local impact. Since we know that IKEA is more on the global side and Eurotex is more locally, since IKEA had many branches within many countries in the world, while Eurotex is Philippines based. So this Eurotex prioritize direct community other and prioritize direct community programs such as the Good Neighborhood Disaster Relief Initiative, employee scholarships, and also its anniversary campaign, the Project 50. So these initiatives tie CSR directly to measurable community benefits. So next, so for the environmental sustainability, so IKEA, so globally it pushes renewable energy adoption, so plant-based products and circular business models. So in the Philippines, progress is visible in EVs, food waste reduction and recycling, but water management and end-of-life product handling remain vague. So Eurotex on the other hand, shows measurable results in renewable energy. So, with its solar facility integration, EV fleet adoption, and compliance with recycling and waste recovery regulations. So, however, like IKEA, so it lacks detailed reporting on water usage and management. So, overall, so IKEA embodies a top-down global approach with ambitious climate positive and circularity targets, but struggles with localized adaptation and transparency in the Philippines, while Eurotex follows a bottom-up localized model, embedding sustainability into everyday operations. So like their solar, EVs, community programs. So while constrained by dependence on imported chemicals, it excels in making sustainability practical and community centered.
And that ends our presentation on the supply chain structure and the comparison of the CSR report for both IKEA and Eurotech.
So, thank you, Group 2, for your presentation. Group 3, Grande and Idos. Each group member need to ask question. So, sino mauna sa inyo? Okay.
Ako na po.
Okay.
Sir, for group 2, I have a question about the end of life practices of IKEA and Eurotech. Since both companies gumagawa sila ng furniture, right? Do they have any programs for managing products after customers are done using them? For example, sa Apple, meron silang trade-in program for old iPhones. Kasi I heard you mention industrial waste, but what about waste from customers? Narinig po ba ako?
Okay, yes. So, based on sa research namin, meron naman silang mga programs like yung mga take back or recycling programs. So, 'di ba may mga nagre-return ng mga products, yung mga items nila. So, whenever may mga returns or may mga resale na schemes, so yun yung ginagamit nila for pwede nilang i-resale ng mas mababang price or nire-recycle din nila. So, it wouldn't go to waste. So, it would make another furniture or make another foams and stuffs. Ayan.
To add lang
Oh.
dun, specifically sa IKEA, kapag nakapunta na kayo sa warehouse, may part sila na tawag dun buy back and resell program. So parang yung mga ibang recycled na ay tapos na nagamit yung product ng isang customer, pwede nila ibalik dun when it's in good condition. Syempre, i-check yun for the quality, if it's still good enough, then i-sell yun in a lower price. So there's still a action in recycling the mismo product.
In addition lang din po for Eurotex, specifically yung mga scraps and offcuts na foam, likely sinashred nila yung foam to repurpose it to create a rebonded foam product such as mattress, cores, or padding na parang binebenta din ulit po nila.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Idos. Grande, your question.
So my question for Group 2, how does Eurotex demonstrate stronger local supply chain integration in the Philippines compared to IKEA's reliance on imports?
Okay lang pa ulit. Thank you.
How does Eurotex demonstrate stronger local supply chain integration in the Philippines compared to IKEA's reliance on imports?
Okay, to answer that, since Eurotex is a local brand, it has more foundation in terms of local relations with other, parang yung sa mga transpo, yung mga connections and networks. They have a stronger network system here in the Philippines compared to IKEA. So that is also a advantage for them in integrating like yung sa community based na programs nila and also their initiatives in education and promoting their product to them.
And to add lang din, since Eurotex nga, so this is mostly PH based. So although it requires more on the imports uh, from the other countries, since syempre yung mga materials talagang may mga inaangkat. So yung supply chain kasi nila talagang nagfo-focus here in the Philippines, it is community based. While on the other hand, the IKEA, so they have like 400 plus na branches. So although marami silang connections, marami silang like yung sa supply chain, parang mas nagde-demonstrate lang nung Eurotex yung better supply chain locally since Philippine-based company nga siya.
And also, to answer your question then, nabanggit ko din kanina na nag-partner sila with the Inuwak Philippines Corporation, which is, it's a manufacturer in Japan that specializes in yung raw materials. So it, parang mas, parang Eurotex is now better assured to source those raw materials because they have a joint ownership over the Inuwak Philippines Corporation.
That's all. Thank you po.
Thank you, Group 2. Now we'll be proceeding for to Group 3. Wala pa rin si Bonifacio.
Wala pa rin po sir na paramdam po. Tinatawagan ko po siya eh.
Okay, sige. Ano muna, Group 3.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I am Jana Idas, and together with my groupmate, Angeline Grande, we will be discussing our technical report on the sustainability efforts of two logistics providers, Tugo, which is the Philippines' largest shipping and logistics company, and DHL, a global leader in logistics. So this report doesn't just look at what they say in terms of commitments, it dives into how these commitments show up in their actual supply chain practices. Next slide, please. So we will assess these two companies using 4 criteria. First, whether they have a clear baseline and emissions inventory, meaning they've measured their environmental impact and reported where they stand now. Second is whether they've made time-bound commitments like specific targets for 2030 or 2050. And third, whether they've backed up these goals with measurable actions such as investing in greener fleets or renewable energy, and finally, whether they are transparent and comparable, meaning they use recognized reporting frameworks and share enough detail for stakeholders to trust and evaluate their progress. So by applying this criteria, we can compare how Tugo and DHL are performing and what lessons each company offers in terms of building greener supply chains.
So let's begin with 2GO. It's the Philippines' largest integrated logistics company, and its supply chain stretches across 19 ports with a fleet of 10 modernized vessels. They provide not only shipping and cargo transport, but also warehousing and last-mile delivery services. To reduce their environmental impact, 2GO has invested in fuel-efficient engines for ships, introduced motion sensor lighting in warehouses to cut electricity use by 40%, and deployed multi-temperature refrigerated vans, which reduce emissions by over 230 tons annually. This effort shows that 2GO is making operational improvements in its supply chain. However, the reliance on maritime transport also makes them vulnerable to delays from port congestion and vessel downtime. Overall, 2GO demonstrates practical steps towards a greener supply chain, but this need to be matched with better reporting and stronger sustainability frameworks.
Now let's look at DHL. Unlike Tugo's local scope, DHL is a global powerhouse with operations in over 200 countries. Its supply chain is vast and covers air, sea, land, warehousing, and last mile delivery. What stands out is how DHL integrates sustainability into this global network. They've created Go Green services where customers can see the emissions impact of their shipping choices using tools like the Go Green dashboard. Their warehouses are designed to be net zero ready, meaning they are built with renewable energy systems and sustainable heating. As for transportation, DHL is pushing for electric fleets in cities to cut last mile emissions, and they're heavily investing in sustainable aviation fuel, one of the hardest areas to decarbonize. Their scale allows them to roll out these initiatives worldwide, showing how a multinational company can use its supply chain to drive greener logistics.
So now let's evaluate 2GO using the 4 CSR criteria. For baseline and emissions inventory, 2GO has pledged net zero emissions by 2050 and discloses Scope 1 and Scope 2 inventory. However, they do not yet provide a full breakdown across Scope 3 emissions, which limits transparency on total climate impact. On time-bound commitments, the company has long-term targets of net zero by 2050 and 30% reduction in Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions by 2030. While these goals set direction, they could be made stronger by disclosing clearer short-term milestones to track near-term progress. For measurable actions, 2GO has introduced practical initiatives, fleet modernization, motion sensor lighting, and energy efficient vans, which do reduce emissions, but they don't always provide quantifiable results beyond isolated examples. Lastly, on transparency and comparability, their sustainability reporting is weak. There is little information on their water footprint, no measurable targets for water use, and their life cycle assessments are broad. In short, 2GO shows intent and operational improvements, but their CSR reporting falls short in detail, making it difficult to compare with international best practices.
Next slide, please. Okay. Now let's assess DHL. So for baseline and emissions inventory, DHL is very strong in this. They report detailed greenhouse gas emissions for Scope 1 and key Scope 3 categories. Their net zero target has even been validated by the Science Based Targets Initiative, giving it external credibility. And on time-bound commitments, they stand out by setting both long-term and short-term milestones. They plan to reduce emissions from 40 million metric tons in 2021 to under 29 million by 2030, while also committing to net zero by 2050. And when it comes to measurable actions, DHL shows clear investments on this. They're transitioning 66% of their last mile fleet to electric vehicles by 2030. And as of now, about 35% of their last mile vehicles are already electric. And they're also scaling up sustainable aviation fuel and introducing Go Green Plus so customers can directly reduce life cycle emissions. And as for transparency and comparability, DHL is also strong on this. Their sustainability reports are detailed. They use recognized frameworks and are published annually, which allows stakeholders to track their progress. The only gaps here are that the water footprint reporting is limited, since they see water as less material to their operations. And while they do have partial life cycle assessment, they aren't fully comprehensive. Like, they fail to address the raw materials used to build their infrastructure and the end of life of vehicles, packaging, and other vessels. Although they have waste plants, but it's more of offsetting emissions. Because when we say offsetting emissions, it means compensating elsewhere outside of your company's emissions. Like, let's say, tree planting to compensate for fuel emissions, while insetting emissions is reducing emissions inside the company's supply chain itself. But still, compared to Go, DHL demonstrates much stronger alignment between goals, actions, and transparency.
To wrap up, both 2GO and DHL share the same end goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2050, but their path differs greatly. DHL provides a clear, measurable, and transparent roadmap with milestones for 2030 and beyond, backed with real investments in green fleets, sustainable aviation fuels, and net zero-ready facilities. 2GO, meanwhile, has taken tangible steps like modernizing vessels and improving energy efficiency, but their reporting lacks depth. They don't provide a complete emissions inventory, have no short-term targets, and share a very little about water use or life cycle assessment. But both companies could do more in terms of water footprint reporting and comprehensive life cycle assessment. The lesson here is that local providers like 2GO needs to align with global reporting practices if they want to stay competitive and credible in the logistical industry. Transparency and measurable progress aren't just options. They are standard for future of sustainable. That's all po. Thank you po.
So, group 1, question.
Question ko po is how does Togo's carbon emission compare to the DHL's, which is given that DHL has more global operations?
To answer that, of course, since global yung DHL, they're gonna have more carbon emissions since they're using more vehicles, more fleets, they have more infrastructure, and to go less, of course. But yung difference is, DHL has more green initiatives practices to compensate for those emissions compared to go.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, audible naman ako. Yung sa akin naman is about carbon footprint siya. And I just want to ask is which part of their logistics process, whether yung air, sea, or land transport, contributes to most of their emissions?
Yung sa 2GO, yung carbon footprint niya, mas nakikita siya sa sea kasi nga maritime transport yung expertise nila. And dun sa And yung sa DHL naman, yung sa mga airplanes, cargo airplanes nila.
To add, sa DHL, yung aviation nila is largest contributor dun sa carbon emissions nila, which is why, as I mentioned, they're investing in sustainable aviation fuels, which is more of used oil instead of fossil fuels, para they can reduce those emissions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Group 3, Group 1.
Uh, hello, and good day, everyone. Apologies for the delay. I am Jeremiah Malinis together with Gerson Arsena and Leland Bonifacio. Unfortunately, Bonifacio would not be with us today. He's not responding to us. And let's start. First of all, we would like to recap about everything all at once since we changed one of the companies to Bio Manila. From Tough Wave, we made it to Bio Manila since Tough Wave doesn't have that much information. We transitioned to Bio Manila, which we'll get further to later. Anyway, fashion is one of the most visible industries in our daily lives, but it's also one of the most intensive. Behind every shirt or pair of jeans is a story of materials, people, and environmental costs. This is why corporate social responsibility or CSR matters. CSR is not just about image, it shows us how brands take responsibility for the way their products affect society and the environment. Today, we will be focusing on two companies with very different approaches. Bio Manila is a proudly Filipino brand, integrates CSR by empowering communities and preserving culture. Meanwhile, Uniqlo is a global fashion giant that leans on scale, innovation, and technology to push sustainability forward. But while both brands have impressive initiatives, they also face clear gaps and challenges. And by the end of this presentation, we'll see how these strengths and gaps shape their long-term credibility in sustainable fashion. Before we start, let us go with Bio Manila.
So let's do a short recap first. So Bio Manila is a Filipino clothing brand established in the 1990s, primarily catering to women aged 25 to 35. So the brand has built its identity on blending global fashion trends with Filipino culture, giving its design both modern appeal and local character. So what makes Bio stand out is its strong commitment to sustainability and local craftsmanship. Next slide to Uniqlo, please. While Uniqlo is founded in Japan, which has grown into a global brand by blending Japanese principles of quality and innovation with universal fashion appeal through its lifewear concept. And we all know that the company is known for its advanced fabrics like heat tech and Erisim, which making everyday clothing more functional and comfortable. So in terms of sustainability, they shift to eco-friendly materials such as organic cotton and recycled polyester. So next slide, please. So for Bio Manila, SCM, first is we have raw material sourcing. The company highlights its strong connection to local culture and sustainability by using indigenous textiles such as piña, abaca, Philippine cotton, and silk, but also showcase the rich weaving traditions of the Philippines. By incorporating these textiles in their collections, the brand strengthens the identity of its products as authentically Filipino while also promoting more eco-friendly alternatives to synthetic fabrics. Also, the company actively partners with weaving communities in areas like Bulacan, Aklan, and the Cordillera region. These partnerships support local livelihoods by creating consistent demand for hand-woven fabrics while also preserving centuries-old craftsmanship that might otherwise be risk of decline. So, in this way, raw material sourcing is not just about supply. It becomes a form of the cultural preservation and especially the sustainable fashion practice. So, for distribution and retail, the company follows a hybrid model. So, what is hybrid model? This means products are handled through centralized warehouses for efficiency and then to distributed to different outlets such as Atelier in Greenbelt, mall-based boutiques, and online e-commerce platforms. They also emphasize traceability with their soil-to-garment collections, ensuring customers know where materials come from and how they are produced. And on the top of that, they promote return management and recycling in logistics, which showing responsibility for products even after they reach consumers. And lastly, we have for production and manufacturing, which operations are handled by Power Fashions Incorporated, and they manage key processes like cutting, stitching, and finishing garments. What makes their production stand out is that the focus on 100% Philippine-made identity that can highlight local craftsmanship. Also, they practice sustainability by reusing fabric offcuts to minimize waste and reinforcing their eco-conscious approach in the manufacturing. And then let's proceed to CSR reports.
Thank you, Gerson. And now proceeding to Bio's CSR approach, it is deeply rooted in community building. Its flagship program, the Harvest Community Hubs, empowers women weavers by giving them upgraded looms, training, and guaranteed purchase agreements. This preserves traditional weaving while securing stable livelihoods. Bio also drives the hashtag Journey to Zero campaign, which aims for zero waste, circularity, and net zero carbon emissions by year 2030. The results are measurable. Fabric waste has gone down from 35 to 40% to just 5 to 7%, while electricity and water use dropped by around 30%. Another innovative project is TexRex, done with DOST PTRI, which converts textile waste into regenerated yarn. This reduces landfill waste and creates alternative income streams for marginalized groups. However, the gap for Bio is transparency on global scale. While its local impact is strong, it hasn't published standardized life cycle assessments or full scope 1 to 3 emission data. Without this, its climate pledges, though ambitious, risk being seen as aspirational rather than fully verifiable.
So let's proceed to Uniqlo SCM. First is we have supplier partnership, which a key partner is Kahira, which is a leading Japanese denim manufacturer known for its traditional indigo dyeing techniques combined with modern innovations. Through this collaboration, Uniqlo is able to produce more durable, stylish, and responsibly made denim products. And another important partner is Toray Industries, which this is one of Japan's top synthetic fiber producers, which supplies Uniqlo with cutting-edge fabrics that support innovations like HeatTech and Erisim. And one major innovation from this collaboration is which we call the Blue Cycle denim process, which uses advanced laser and ozone technologies to reduce water consumption by up to 99% compared to traditional denim production methods. This not only lowers environmental impact, but also positions Uniqlo as a leader in integrating sustainable practices into large-scale manufacturing. So, by partnering with specialized suppliers, this brand Uniqlo ensures that its products are not only fashionable and affordable, but also environmentally responsible. And second is we have logistics and distributions. So Uniqlo relies on regional warehouses that handle product storage, delivery, and e-commerce fulfillment. They balance efficiency and cost by using sea freight for bulk shipments and air freight for urgent replenishments. So this system allows stores to be replenished in about 6 days, while online orders in some markets can be fulfilled within just 1 day, which this is showing their strong capability in meeting customers' demand quickly and accurately. And last one is we have production and outsourcing. So Uniqlo works with different factories across China, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Indonesia and India. So to maintain their high standards, they operate regional productions offices that closely monitor product quality, ensure fair labor conditions, and check compliance with company and global regulations. So this setup supports both efficiency in manufacturing side and especially in responsibility in ethical sourcing. So let's proceed to CSR reports of Uniqlo.
As a global brand, Uniqlo CSR focuses on scale and innovation. Its Re.Uniqlo or Re-Uniqlo program collects used clothing worldwide and either repairs, recycles, or redistributes them to refugees and disaster victims. On the production side, Uniqlo leads with its Blue Cycle denim finishing process. Using ozone mist and nanobubbles, this process cuts water use by up to 99%, as mentioned earlier by Gerson. So in our earlier reports, we said that it was 90, but we would like to clarify it now that it is actually 99% compared to traditional denim washing. In terms of materials, Uniqlo has made progress. 47.4% of its polyester products now come from recycled inputs, and the company is on track to achieve 50% recycled or low-emission material by sourcing in year 2030. But the gap is in its supply chain credibility. Because production is outsourced to multiple countries, Uniqlo has faced criticisms over low wages and unsafe working conditions in some factories. While they publish codes of conduct and factory lists, enforcement remains inconsistent. So Uniqlo's CSR is strong in technological innovation, but weaker when it comes to labor accountability. Now proceeding to its excuse me, comparative analysis, Bio Manila reflects a community-first, people-centered model. Its strengths lie in cultural preservation, empowerment of local artisans, and measurable reductions in production waste. But its weakness is the lack of global standardized reporting, something that prevents it from gaining stronger international recognition. Uniqlo, on the other hand, represents a technology-driven, skill-oriented model. It leverages innovations like Blue Cycle and Re-Uniqlo to cut environmental impact across millions of products. But its weakness lies in monitoring labor practices across its vast outsourced supply chain. So both brands push sustainability forward, but in different ways. Bio proves that local brands can integrate social empowerment and sustainability into their DNA. Uniqlo shows how scale and technology can create large-scale environmental impact, yet both leaves a gap. Bio in transparency and Uniqlo in accountability. And that is the real lesson here. Sustainability is not just about having programs, it's about closing those gaps to make sure progress is consistent, credible, and transformative. That is all. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Group 1. Group 2, questions?
Narinig po ba ako?
Yes.
Okay. So, sa question ko naman, it's about the raw materials dun sa kanilang supply chain structure. Since diba mentioned nyo nga na yung bios sources from the indigenous Philippine textiles. While the Uniqlo, yung mga partners niya naman is yung mga large suppliers, yung kay Hyra and Toray. So, for this, anong strategy yung magiging more sustainable in the long run? Like, the supporting local communities yung sa Bayo or yung scaling ng global partnerships with advanced technology, yung Uniqlo.
Based dun sa study is sa bio is we have sources like indigenous textiles like pinya, abaca, and local cotton. So sa Uniqlo naman is partner siya sa mga big suppliers like Toray and Kahira. So is the bio is more like socially and culturally sustainable, which they can help local communities around here in the Philippines and also preserving traditions. And while Uniqlo is more environmentally scalable, which it has a huge impact on water savings and global reach. So in short, bio is sustainable locally, while Uniqlo is sustainable globally. So in the long run, Uniqlo is more sustainable globally. So yes.
Okay, my question is regarding the CSR reports. Do you think either companies like Bio or the Uniqlo CSR activities are more on their branding and marketing, or do they create real social and environmental impact?
Both Bio and Uniqlo, actually, nagigain sila ng branding value from their CSR nga. But they're not purely marketing. May mga evidences sila for real impact. Bawa for bio programs like Harvest Community Hubs and TextRev, hindi lang siya symbolic, but they've documented measurable results. Whereas sa Uniqlo naman, initiatives like yung Blue Cycle as mentioned kanina and yung Re-Uniqlo delivers measurable and environmental results tulad nung cutting water use by up to 99% and yung recycled polyester share to 47.4%. And ayun. So, in short, both efforts go beyond marketing and create tangible impact. But yun nga, Bayer lacks global accountability and Uniqlo lacks consistency in labor enforcement. So, ito lang yung mga gaps na nagbablur dun sa line nila between CSR ng both companies.
Hello, yung question ko is regarding sa, yung na-mention nyo is Re-Uniqlo program ng Uniqlo tapos may soil to garment fee bio. So parang are they similar ba in practice or parang may limitations in each one?
About dun sa Reuniqlo program and soil to garment, both they are sustainability programs, but they focus on different parts of the clothing cycle. Dun sa Reuniqlo program, it's about the end of life clothes, like yung mga collecting ka ng used clothes from customers, then recycling or using them to reduce waste, especially ganun. And then dun sa bio naman, which is soil to garment, it's about the beginning of the cycle, which sourcing from the raw materials directly from the local farmers to make sure that the process is more eco-friendly. So they not the same, but they complement each other. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think that ends the presentation. All groups did a good job for the presentation. I'll be checking yung manuscript nyo. And then we'll meet again at maybe 11:45 for the GLM class. Thank you and see you later.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.